Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I very welcome my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. And today we are asking who should be the showrunner of Doctor Who, because it most certainly shouldn't be Chris Chibnall. And we'll speak about him in this video as well. If you're feeling charitable, please smash the subscribe button and the like button, and follow me over on Twitter at MoviesTVMad, where we can debate Doctor Who all day long on my timeline, not in my DMs. No, none of that. Let's keep things public, right? Anyway, who should be showrunner of Doctor Who? Then you ask the question, should it be a fan or should it be a non-fan? Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall are all die-hard Doctor Who fanboys. Nobody in the industry knows Doctor Who better than them. So first we need to talk about the pluses and minuses of fanboys running Doctor Who. Of course, what Russell T Davies set up when he was employing people to work on the show, whether they were the Grips or anyone. Mostly everyone who worked on RTD's Doctor Who was a fan, going as far as Julie Gardner, Phil Collinson, himself, the writers like Mark Gatiss will come to him later. Stephen Moffat's clearly one of the biggest, Doctor Who fans to ever work on the show. Maybe even the biggest, even bigger than RTD. So it was spread, and the writers who wrote the individual episodes, all Doctor Who fans. So a big knowledge of Doctor Who, right? And that really continued in the Moffat era. But then what happened was, in the Chibnall era, he sacked nearly everyone and employed a bunch of soap writers and writers of Doctors and things like that, who are solid writers, and I'm not insulting them, but there's not the love and passion for Doctor Who. So already, even though Chibnall's a Doctor Who fanboy, he's a more colder character, a calculated character. So you can see with Chibnall that Doctor Who has lost its sense of identity. It's no longer about personality, character interactions. You can have the best cameras, you can have the best CGI. I've said it before, and many more successful YouTubers than me have said that before. But if you don't have the character, if you're not Doctor Who, it simply doesn't work. So basically, I'm getting my boot, and I'm the president of the BBC, right? I kick him out, right? I'll get rid of him. He's gone. So who do I bring in? Again, I have that challenge of saying, do I bring someone who has no feeling or empathy for the Doctor, is not a fan, or do I go back to basics? Well, I go back to basics. So I re-employ everyone Chibnall sacked. Everyone. And I sack everyone that he's employed, right? Including Sagon Akinola, who does the mood music. I could call it nothing more than that, on Doctor Who, right? So he's sacked. Murray Gold's back. I've mentioned that before on this channel, on these videos. Murray Gold, one of the greatest composers in the world, right? Either in television or film. How do you sack him? How do you say, sorry, mate, I'm bringing in someone who does McDonald's mood music, right? I don't know. Some people say Murray's music's too brash and loud. No, it's John Williams, it's Star Wars, it's beautiful. And if you're of the opinion that Doctor Who shouldn't have that type of music, that's entirely up to you. That's your opinion. We're all entitled to our opinions on this platform, definitely, and I respect that. And that's my opinion, and you need to respect that. So basically, I bring in everyone that Chibnall sacked, and then I look at who do we cast as the Doctor? Who do we have to run this show? Now, I know I can't bring back Russell T Davies because he'd never come back full time. I know Stephen Moffat's probably done, but if I wanted to, I probably could persuade him to come back. But then I look at Mark Gatiss. Now, I know a lot of people were divisive about some of his episodes, but Mark Gatiss is a genius. Not only is he one of the great writers in the industry, his work on Sherlock with Stephen Moffat is brilliant and flawless. Episodes like The Unquiet Dead, beautiful Doctor Who episodes, in only the third episode of the revival, right? I would be very tempted in employing Mark Gatiss. I know I said Gatiss, I think it's Gatiss. So Mark Gatiss as the showrunner stroke lead in this new era of Doctor Who. So not only would he run the show, be kind of the head writer, he would be playing the Doctor. Now, we know that Mark Gatiss, I think, has been in Doctor Who about twice. The 2 times I can remember is, I think, in the season 3 episode where he becomes that big thing when he wants to become immortal. He's like this Doctor Professor, isn't he? Do you remember that episode? Of course we do. Season 3, the best season of New Who, in my opinion. Comment down below on your best New Who seasons, by the way. Maybe we'll talk about that in future episodes. I might have even done it already, but hey, I do like a rerun. And then he obviously came back as that soldier in Twice Upon a Time, which was Stephen Moffat's final ever episode as Doctor Who showrunner. So I think that Mark Gatiss not only would be a very interesting, I would say tasty showrunner, going back to that Stephen Moffat, Russell T Davies era, but being original and doing his own thing. That's always important. We don't just want to fly flags and say, well, it's going to be like the good old days. We don't want that. But we don't want to change things for the sake of changing things. I think having Mark Gatiss as the Doctor and as the showrunner would be very, very interesting. I think he's one of the few people who can cope with the pressures from the fans and what they want to see. He could do some very, very exciting, interesting things. Now, we know he was responsible for the different coloured Daleks in Victory of the Daleks, and a lot of people didn't like that. I never had an issue with it. I know they look strikingly different, but sometimes I think some of my fellow Doctor Who fans are just get a little bit carried away with themselves. But anyway, Gatiss playing the Doctor and running the show would be an interesting experiment. I'd like to see it for one season to see how it would work out. I think that's one of the things that you would do straight away. You just want you want the people working on the show. This is how this show was successful, because RTD brought a bunch of people who love Doctor Who. And quite simply, there isn't enough people working on the show who love Doctor Who. I don't think Mandeep Gill's a Doctor Who fan. I don't know if Tulsin Cole's a Doctor Who fan. He may be, but he has nothing to offer in the current setup from no fault of his own. Right, so no one there seems that passionate about Doctor Who. So the only one who's a Doctor Who fan is Chris Chibnall. And that could be debated because he doesn't really feel like the same excitement. When you saw Russell T Davies on the original Doctor Who Confidential, the after show they used to do, Stephen Moffat, you could tell their hearts were in it. Everyone working around them, their hearts were in it. But at this era, this simply doesn't work because he can't be naffed to develop the characters and make them interesting. Doctor Who is no longer fun to watch. The Russell T Davies era, among the other stuff, the drama and everything else, the sci-fi beats, Doctor Who was fun to watch. The Doctor and his companions were fun. Stephen Moffat, Matt Smith, his original companions, they were fun. They were fun, and it was really, really good. And we've lost that. The show's become serious. Now, there's nothing wrong with being totally focused on being serious Doctor Who. The problem that Chibnall has got is, because there's no development of his actual characters and you're not excited about them, they're not relatable, it's a big problem. You can't enjoy the show anymore. You can't enjoy the Doctor because she's not fun. She doesn't even feel like the Doctor, and that's a problem. And this is why big changes have to be made immediately. But the BBC will double down and keep him there for however long, I don't know. Only they know, and he knows how long he wants to stay there. The BBC are in this unenviable situation. Actually, it's an enviable situation where they don't need big ratings. They are making money, and they can keep him there for the end of time. They can keep on, chinning out Doctor Who for the rest of the century because it doesn't really matter who's watching it or who's not watching it. The BBC isn't about ratings. We know that. We know they are making money, and they will continue to make money. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the best cameras, the best setup, right? So we know that Doctor Who isn't going anywhere. They're under no pressure to change anything. But it's up to them how ambitious they are. But if you're asking me who should run Doctor Who, definitely Mark Gatiss should definitely have a crack at the whip. And certainly bring back RTD and Moffat once a year to do their own stories and one episode a year. And I think with Gatiss there, that would be very, very plausible. We are at the moment in a situation where we all know The show's deteriorating, we all know. You see, Chris Chibnall was in this situation where not very many people like him who watch the show. That's a rarity, because even the divisive nature between the fans and Stephen Moffat, he could write an episode which would anger people, but then he'd come out with something like The Name of the Doctor or The Day of the Doctor, and you'd change your mind about him on a weekly basis, because that's who Stephen Moffat is, right? He's an untempered schism, just like in Doctor Who, the show, right? He's an untempered schism. So he was an interesting character, and I think we had a love-hate relationship with him. Now, the audience, really, a lot of the audience have a hate-hate relationship with Chris Chibnall. He's not offering, there's no relationship, there's no kind of banter, there's no interesting thing here. And one of the things I've heard is that, well, season 12 is better than season 11. Yes, that is true, but that simply isn't good enough. You know, simply, we're still asking for characters to be developed and relatable and have personality, and none of that's going on. If his characters were relatable and had personality now, this would be the perfect show, even though what he set up with The Timeless Child and The Timeless Children is utterly, I forgot the word I'm looking for, but it really is, it's controversial, isn't it? It's controversial, but even that being so controversial, if everyone's got, relatable personalities and characters, he's got something to stand on. He has his two legs to stand on. Now, he has got two legs to stand on, but not literally, because at the end of the day, he cast a female doctor. That was a very unpopular decision. So you've got to make sure people don't find excuses not to like you and spread the poison around the television consumer, because that's what the fandom menace are doing. So if you actually develop your female doctor, if you actually develop your companions, right, your multicultural companions, you've got a person of colour, you've got an Indian young woman, and you've got Bradley Walsh, right? All of that. If you actually make them characters, nobody can throw anything at you. But what he's done, I don't even know or understand. I'm interested, because in season 1, The Timeless Child was mentioned. Now, who knows if it was just an off-the-cuff kind of thing, and then he goes, ooh, I could do something with that. Nobody will ever know. We have to assume that he had a plan, and this is it. But season 11 didn't seem really to be going anywhere apart from telling individual stories like the original series did with William Hartnell. And it seemed like he tried to reflect a classic Who with the way it was done. The problem is he was under a misconception. Classic Who, Hartnell's first series, wasn't boring. Hartnell was a very interesting doctor who actually evolved as the series went on. His companions all had personality, interesting dynamics. Ian was the questioning one. He was Scully. No, Doctor, this is not a time machine. You're playing a trick on us. Why don't you give us some evidence? That was really, really interesting. And Barbara was an interesting character because she was a teacher. And, she was stuck on this. Even the way the companions in season 11 are sucked in with the Doctor in space at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth. You think, well, this is interesting because they haven't chosen this. So if they keep on going with her, they're going to resent her. And that's interesting until they evolve and are developed as characters. Instead, by episode 4, they're back home and the Doctor's meeting Yaz's family. What? No. You drag the characters along, they have no choice. Then there's meat in the sandwich. And this is what they originally did with the Hartnell series. And that's what made it so interesting. But Barbara, we can't get back. What are we going to do? Doctor, you must take us back. No, I'm not going to take you back, right? It's interesting. It works. It's like the dynamic between Clara and Capaldi's Doctor. There's this toxicity between them, right? And that works. It's a toxic relationship because we, the audience, the younger members anyway of the audience, have a toxic relationship with Peter Capaldi's Doctor because he's old. He's not as cool as young and young as Tennant and Smith. So basically, Clara is us. And that's why there's a toxic relationship there. It was very cleverly done. And it works. There's nothing between these characters, nothing of interest. And you have an empty shell apart from a very controversial reveal, which I think does bring up lots of potential But unfortunately, with this showrunner, you just don't know what you're going to get. Is it going to be an interesting Bible of a new canon of Doctor Who? Or is it going to be, nah, I've done it now. I ain't going to bother. I don't think but there is potential here. But again, without any personality. If the Doctor isn't the party you want to go to, there's no point. If the Doctor isn't the biggest, most relatable character on the show, there's no point. But the problem he's got is his companions are not even interesting. His guest artist characters are not even interesting. There's nothing of interest apart from the TARDIS. All the cameras look beautiful. This is the most beautiful shot and looking Doctor Who season ever. But so what? So what if I'm not related? If I'm not sucked in by the characters and their stories and their backstories. Their backstories all way for Finn. It is so ordinary. And I think a lot of people have mentioned this. It's boring. Doctor Who now bores people. When people talk about the ratings and they say they're falling, that's not a surprise to me. Because I think people are just bored of Doctor Who. I think people have been bored of Doctor Who even before Chibnall, right? Even in the last few years of the Moffat era. But this is boredom and, watering down on another level. There is just nothing there. There doesn't seem to be a love and a passion for Doctor Who. And there's no personality. There's no fun. And when something isn't fun anymore, you shouldn't do it anymore. And that's why a lot of people are no longer watching Doctor Who. We are desperate for a showrunner who loves Doctor who wants to bring back the fans that were sacked from the show, who used to execute great episode after great episode. Knowing the history of Doctor Who is important, but having the history in your heart and in your mind and in your soul. I don't know why I pointed to my back. I don't know where the soul goes. It's not part of your body, is it? Anyway, I don't know about the soul. But Doctor Who is part of us. We love it. Whether you got involved with the fifth Doctor like I did, if that was your first Doctor, the fourth Doctor, whatever, even if Tennant was your first Doctor or whoever, it doesn't matter. You have a historical, emotional link to this show. And this just doesn't feel like Doctor Who anymore. And it's nothing to do, as I've said many a times, with the gender of the actor playing the Doctor. A female Doctor could have been very successful because it doesn't matter what gender is playing the Doctor. It only matters that they leap off the page, they leap off the screen, and they feel like the Doctor. The Doctor should always be full of character and personality and characterizations. And every Doctor has felt that way until Jodie's Doctor. And that's not her fault. That blame lays directly at Chris Chibnall's door. So I want to know what you think about today's Doctor Who Daily episode. Would you like Mark Gatiss to play the Doctor and run Doctor Who? Do you think it's important that a fan runs Doctor Who, or do you think a non-fan would have that cold kind of distance to it to make it even better than it's ever been before? Let me know down in the comments down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more Doctor Who Daily. See you again soon.